Are the Raiders and Maxx Crosby staring down a divorce? What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. On today's show, could Lamar Jackson be the key to keeping Maxx Crosby in Las Vegas? Plus, are we going to finally see Rasmus Anderson's debut for the Vegas Golden Knights? And Bill Foley is selling the Golden Knights, or at least part of the team. One of the biggest storylines of the offseason is going to be the future of Maxx Crosby. Does he ask for a trade? He was angry about the end of the season and getting put on IR when he was hurt and needed surgery, but he wanted to play through it. Do the Raiders think it's in their best interest to trade him, and what would his value actually be? Is it enough to move on from Maxx Crosby? We got a bit of a peek into what this offseason could bring yesterday. Maxx Crosby talked to the media for the first time this offseason and was specifically asked if the Raiders have talked to him about the coaching search. And Crosby says, "Not really, no. I haven't talked to them, not in the last couple of weeks." He went on to say he's been focused on his rehab and his family. Is that a red flag? Does that stick out as sort of problematic that the Raiders haven't talked to Crosby about the head coaching search? Basically keeping him out of the loop. Does that say, hey, they might try to trade him because why do they care what his opinion is if they move him to a new team? Or are they just being smart because a couple off seasons ago, Maxx Crosby wanted Antonio Pierce to be the next head coach, and that worked out pretty terribly for the Raiders. I don't think it's bad to completely keep players out of the loop, even somebody with the stature of Maxx Crosby, because again, he wanted Antonio Pierce. So I don't think that specifically is a problem. Not telling Crosby, not telling any of these players like what's happening in the coaching search. I think it's perfectly fine to just do whatever you're doing, whatever interviews, whatever you're thinking as a front office or a head coach, front office or an owner, and not telling Crosby. I think that's fine. But it does add an extra layer to the tension between the Raiders and Maxx Crosby because the way the season ended wasn't great. They're not keeping him in the loop. And Crosby didn't just say, hey, they're not keeping me in the loop. He said he hasn't talked to them in a couple of weeks. So Spytek, Brady, Mark Davis, all three of them haven't said anything to Maxx Crosby in a couple weeks, at least according to Maxx Crosby, which goes beyond just the coaching search. That could be just a checking in. Hey, how you doing with rehab? Haven't done that, I guess, either. So it does feel like there's tension between Crosby and the front office with the Raiders. So does that actually mean anything? I think it means they're open to trading him. I think it means they actually would for the first time. We had a report back in December from Diana Russini where she wrote that many people in the NFL believe the Raiders would actually trade him this offseason, right? Even though every time Mark Davis has been asked about it in the past, he's tried to shut it down and say, no, we wouldn't trade Maxx Crosby. But the last time Mark Davis talked about it was back in October. That was before they truly tanked and sat Maxx Crosby. And that was before the general manager, John Spytek, said, hey, this is going to be a rebuild. So how does that change the way Mark Davis actually views this? I think they should absolutely be trading Maxx Crosby, right? That to me is like a no-brainer decision for a franchise that's rebuilding. I think that's an easy choice. And if you can get 2 first-round picks out of it, awesome, but you should get at least one plus another good pick. Is it a second-round pick? That would be nice. If you can get a first and a second, that's definitely worth it. A first and a third is probably worth it as well, because as good as Crosby is, he doesn't match the timeline. Like, that's just the reality of this. The Raiders are not going to be good again. Like I say again, but they're not going to be good in Crosby's prime. Unless Crosby has a crazy prime where he's 34 years old and like second in the league in sacks. Be surprised if that's the case. But more than likely, Crosby's prime is these next 2 years. And then there is a decline coming for Maxx Crosby's play. There's no real need to have a player as good as Crosby when you could turn that into a couple of draft picks, draft a couple of guys that are 23 years old, and then they are at the start of their primes in their third season when you are, in theory, good. The rebuild might go poorly and they might never be good, but that would be the idea. So I think it's a no-brainer to trade away Maxx Crosby. Getting high-value picks is what this organization should be doing. That should be their priority because that's going to be the best way to bring in young talent that lines up with your timeline and helps Fernando Mendoza be good. But I do have a hypothetical for you because I think this is entirely possible. The idea of Lamar Jackson getting traded, it's out there. Talked about it on yesterday's show. If you missed it, go find it. It's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening or watching this. Just go find yesterday's if you missed that one. But the idea of trading for Lamar Jackson is out there. And here's the hypothetical. What if Maxx Crosby goes directly to Mark Davis? Not John Spytek or not Tom Brady, directly to Mark Davis, directly to the guy who has said multiple times he's not trading Maxx Crosby. What if he goes to him and says, I demand to be traded unless you trade for Lamar Jackson? Mark Davis loves Maxx Crosby. Loves it, right? He's the face of the franchise. He is the exact type of player that Mark Davis wants to be a Raider and be the face of the franchise, right? If he goes to Mark Davis and says, I demand to trade unless you bring in Lamar Jackson, does Mark Davis do that? Does Mark Davis tell Tom Brady and John Spytek, this is what I want to happen? Obviously, the Ravens have to agree to it. Mark Davis can't just force the Ravens to make that trade. But let's, in the hypothetical, let's say the Ravens actually are interested in trading Lamar Jackson, and they would take the first overall pick in the draft for Lamar Jackson. Does Mark Davis make Spytek and Brady do that? Because I can see him doing it. I can see Mark Davis saying, one, I want to keep Maxx Crosby around, and I want to keep Maxx Crosby happy. And two, trading for Lamar Jackson is going to get me a lot of headlines. It's going to be awesome on TV, on shows like My Dumb Show. It's going to be great. I can see Mark Davis buying into that idea and saying, in his mind, we've got the defensive superstar, we've got the quarterback superstar, we're ready to win now. I can see it happening. I don't know if it will, but that's my hypothetical for you. That's how I think it could actually happen. Now, one other thing on Maxx Crosby, because part of the interest in his storyline is, does he actually want to get moved out of Las Vegas? He has said multiple times before that he doesn't want to leave Las Vegas. And I've said it before that he likes Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. He doesn't like LeBron James. And he's said in the past that sort of he values the career of Jordan and Kobe Bryant more than that of LeBron James because LeBron James went to different teams, and that Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan did it with one team. If Maxx Crosby goes to a different team, he's now LeBron James, right? He's no longer Kobe or Michael Jordan, the two guys he has tattooed on his stomach. He's now LeBron James, the guy that he doesn't want to be compared to when it's Kobe, MJ, and LeBron. Is he willing to do that? And I would give a football comparison, a teammate for a short time of Maxx Crosby, and it's Davante Adams. Because Davante Adams talked to the media yesterday. ESPN had a story about Davante Adams, and Davante Adams being close again to a Super Bowl. Hasn't won one, right? He was not there in Green Bay when the Packers won the Super Bowl. They, I believe, went to 4 NFC title games, and they did not win a single one of them when Davante Adams was there. They were close. Adams came to the Raiders, thought the Raiders were going to be good. They weren't. He finally got out of there. Short trip to the Jets, also a disaster, but now he's with the Rams, another team that could win the Super Bowl. And Davante Adams, fair to say he's not peak Davante Adams. This is probably the end of the prime years for Davante Adams, but he's still very good. But this is kind of it for Adams. He sort of wasted away for, a year and a half here with the Raiders of not having any real shot at winning a Super Bowl. How important is it to Maxx Crosby to win a Super Bowl when he is top of the game, top of his game, at his peak? If that's important to him, there's no chance he should stay in Las Vegas because the GM, at least the GM now, is saying they're going to rebuild. if winning the Super Bowl is not that important, if he values sort of the loyalty to one team more than winning a Super Bowl, stay in Vegas, right? And that's fine if you want to value that more. But if the Super Bowl is the value there, I think it's pretty obvious that he should be asking for a trade from the Raiders, because it's not going to happen in his prime here, right? Like, he could be a good player and they win the Super Bowl 4 years from now, but he won't probably be the best defensive player on the team when the Raiders are contending, if they are, in fact, contending. If he's the best defensive player on the team 4 years from now, either Crosby's going to go down as like the best defensive end of all time, or the Raiders have done a really bad job in their rebuild and they're not actually contending. I also wanted to touch on another team, because I love to talk about how bad Raiders ownership is, how bad the front office has been, and how that could easily turn off a head coaching candidate, right? Even with the number 1 pick, you might look at the Raiders and say, ugh, Mark Davis keeps firing people. Is Tom Brady in charge? You don't know? Nobody knows? We don't talk about that? Okay. Like, that could very easily turn off a candidate. Well, Mark Davis has a competitor here, because Terry Pegula, the owner of the Buffalo Bills, I mean, what was he doing yesterday? The Bills had a press conference with Brandon Beane, who's their general manager, who just got promoted to president after they lost and got eliminated from the Super Bowl. And they had this press conference because they fired their head coach, Sean McDermott. And in that press conference, Terry Pegula basically said one of his players sucks. There was a question about the wide receivers, because the Bills' wide receivers are bad. They don't have good wide receivers. And a couple of years ago, they drafted Keon Coleman in the 2nd round. And Keon Coleman was potentially going to be a fix here, and hey, he's the good wide receiver. Well, the owner, Terry Pegula, in this press conference, interjected after Brandon Beane had answered the question. Terry Pegula was like, I got to say something. And he said that the coaching staff pushed to pick Keon Coleman. And he said, quote, that was Brandon being a team player. He's taken, for some reason, heat over it. Basically saying Keon Coleman was a bad pick. The coaching staff wanted it, not the general manager. First off, Keon Coleman has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Like, the owner of the team basically just said, yeah, this guy we've got 2 more years of sucks. It was a disaster to pick him. Stop yelling at my GM about picking him, because it was the coach that I just fired who picked this crappy player. That's what Terry Pegula said yesterday about Keon Coleman. And beyond that, he rips his own player. But I came away with that quote thinking, well, the GM's bad too. Because what Terry Pegula said is that his general manager didn't think Keon Coleman would be a good draft pick, and that his general manager allowed the coaching staff to bully him into picking a player that he knew was bad. So stop blaming the GM for that pick. That's a shitty general manager. If you know the player sucks, don't let your coaching staff be the ones that make the pick, right? But that's not what actually happened. That's not reality. That's the weird thing that Terry Pegula is trying to spin. There's actually a video that got posted yesterday of Brandon Beane, the general manager, at the combine saying it was a good thing Keon Coleman ran a slow 40 time, because Keon Coleman could fall to them and they could draft Keon Coleman. He wanted Keon Coleman. This idea that the coaching staff wanted Coleman and not the general manager is ridiculous. And it's some lie that Terry Pegula made up to try to distance his general manager from a bad pick, but while doing so, makes his general manager look incompetent and rips a player that's still on his team. Just insane for an owner to come out and say that. And I don't even think it's the worst thing he said yesterday. The owner of the Bills yesterday said that he fired his head coach, Sean McDermott, based on the results of our game in Denver. And then went on and told a story about seeing Josh Allen crying in the locker room and Josh Allen wouldn't acknowledge him. That is abhorrent decision-making. Sean McDermott was your head coach for 9 seasons. You had damn near a decade of data on Sean McDermott, and you fired him because you lost an overtime game on the road to the number 1 seed in the AFC, a game in which your team had 5 turnovers. So if Brandon Cooks holds on to that ball and it's not an interception and the Bills kick a field goal, Terry Pagula thinks Sean McDermott's a good coach that needs to stick around. Like, it's just insane. And by the way, Terry Pagula in his same press conference said the refs made a mistake and that was not an interception. So he fired Sean McDermott because in his mind, the refs made a mistake? Because in his mind, that should have been a catch. The Bills kick a field goal and they win the game and they're still playing. He's telling us that he thinks the Bills were good enough to win that game, but he still fired the head coach over that game. Somebody's got to take Grandpa's team away from him. Somebody has to. Because if that's the decision-making that's going on there, the Bills are not going to be any good. The Bills are lucky to have Josh Allen because otherwise it's a dumpster fire of an organization. Terry Pagula, he bought the Buffalo Sabres of the NHL in 2011. They went to the playoffs the first year that he owned the team. He bought them in February, and then they went to the playoffs a couple months later, so he doesn't even get credit for that one. They haven't been back since, and it's been 14 seasons. It's the longest drought in the NHL. He bought the Bills a few years later. They went to the playoffs one time in his first 4 years of ownership, and then Josh Allen came along, and they've been every single year since. The only success Terry Pagula-owned teams have is because of Josh Allen. They are so lucky to have Josh Allen. It's insane. And by the way, they're reportedly interested in hiring Brian Daboll as their head coach. He was the Bills' offensive coordinator. He left to become the Giants' head coach. That didn't work out, and now they're like, yeah, come on back and be our head coach. It'll work out here. I guess it's possible Daniel Jones and the Giants were just terrible, but why would Buffalo think he's better than McDermott? They've got Josh Allen, so it's still an attractive job, but if I were a head coach, I'd be like, what the hell did he just say? He's going to blame me because we lost to the 1 seed on the road, and he thinks the ref made a bad call that would have otherwise given us a win? Just insane. Horrendous ownership. How are there so many bad sports owners? It's so wild to me that there's so many owners in sports that suck, that are just terrible. Baseball's got a third of the league that's just spend money. Why would we do that? We'll just call up somebody from AAA. You're still going to show up to the games. NFL's got morons like Terry Pagula out here, right? It's insane to me. There's so many bad owners in this sport. Whatever the hell Jenny Buss is doing and ripping LeBron James and that story that's come out, it's just, you're running a sports team. It shouldn't be that hard, and yet constantly we just see incompetence after incompetence from these owners. It's wild. Coming up next, we're going to get into a little bit of what's happening in soccer in Las Vegas because it's not good, and Cliff Kingsbury in Vegas.
Battle Blast, been serving Las Vegas since June 2012 with the very best in family entertainment. We are proud to provide the best facility, equipment, and service possible. Strap on laser tag vests, step into the 5,600 square foot 2-story arena designed to look like a worn-torn city street. An exciting atmosphere filled with exhilarating music, blacklight effects, and fog. Battle Blast also features a viewing deck for those not playing can watch players vest up and catch a view of the action going on in the arena. In between games, check out our arcade and prize center and enjoy tasty treats from our snack bar. Birthday parties, sports teams, group outings, and corporate events. Battle Blast does it all. We want to make your Battle Blast experience so good you'll want to return again and again. Battle Blast is the ultimate destination for family fun and friendly competition.
Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas. I love Battle Blast Las Vegas. They're sponsoring the show. They're making this possible for me to do it. So big shout out to Battle Blast Las Vegas. They are the best laser tag in Vegas. Battle Blast is your best chance or best spot, best opportunity for your next event. Kid's birthday party, your birthday party, corporate event, whatever it is, Battle Blast is the place to go. Get your friends and family, your coworkers, whoever together and go see who is good at laser tag at Battle Blast Las Vegas. Check them out at 8125 West Sahara Avenue. Battle Blast Las Vegas, your next stop for fun in Vegas. Cashman Field is being redeveloped into housing. Maybe. We'll see if it actually happens. Alan Snell at LV Sports Biz had a story on this because the Las Vegas City Council voted yesterday. They are giving a developer a 4-year timeline here, and they're supposedly going to build housing at the Cashman site. So we'll see if that happens. It feels like Cashman has been up for redevelopment since the 51s moved out, right? It's been years, and it feels like every year we get hey, they're going to redevelop it into this, and it never actually happens. But the main sports question here is that Las Vegas Lights FC, the USL team that plays at Cashman, minor league soccer, they're going to play there again in 2026. But after that, where they play is a big question mark. In theory, they build their own stadium somewhere, but can they actually do that, right? Jose Bautista, former Major League Baseball player, he's the primary owner. Does he have enough money to build a brand new stadium for Las Vegas Lights? It would be much smaller than what we normally see, but does he have enough money to do that? I honestly do not know. Would there be public money from the city of Las Vegas, Clark County, the state of Nevada? Henderson loves sports. I'm sure they would give out some public money, but would there be public money for lights? I don't know. It's minor league soccer, so I don't know that there would be. And obviously, they need a home, right? You can't have a team if you don't play anywhere. But the other part of this that's sort of interesting is the USL, the league that Lights plays in, starting in 2028, they are going to start having promotion and relegation. And there's going to be 3 divisions of soccer within the USL, and the top division is going to have a stadium requirement. Now, I don't believe they've actually publicly said what that stadium requirement is, but there's going to be a minimum capacity. Is it 10,000? Probably more. Is it 15? Maybe it's even 20,000, your minimum capacity for a stadium to play in the top division of USL. Lights FC have said that they plan to be in the top division of USL. So they got to build a new stadium. It'll be new, but it's also got to be the right size here for USL's top division. Can they make that happen? I honestly do not know. Like, I have genuinely no idea if Jose Bautista just has the money to do it, if they are going to have to get significant public funding, or if there's some other alternative way to fund this. I don't know. So we'll see what the future of Lights FC is, but it definitely feels like we could be looking at trouble for Las Vegas Lights FC in the near future. In the NFL, Davis Webb, he's the Broncos quarterbacks coach who has been interviewed for head coaching jobs, including the Raiders head coaching job. Jeremy Fowler reported yesterday that if Davis Webb gets a head coaching job, he could bring Cliff Kingsbury with him as offensive coordinator. Kingsbury, the interesting part on that, Kingsbury was the head coach at Texas Tech when Davis Webb played quarterback at Texas Tech. So former player becomes the head coach and his former head coach becomes the offensive coordinator. Would be kind of funny. But I guess the question I have is, if you're hiring Davis Webb, quarterback's coach in Denver, is he not going to be calling plays? Because isn't that that's kind of the whole point of the offensive-minded play caller? And I guess you can have somebody else calling plays and Davis Webb is there installing the offense and whatever. But it just feels like if you hire the offensive-minded head coach, it's because he's going to call plays. And if you hire Davis Webb, Kingsbury comes and he calls plays, and then what if Cliff Kingsbury gets hired as a head coach? Because it's very possible that he gets head coaching interviews if he has a good offense, and he goes off somewhere else. Now you have to find a new play caller, or does Davis Webb do it? It just seems odd that he wouldn't be the one calling the plays. So I don't know. Maybe that would still work out just fine, but it did seem like an odd detail that would diminish the reasons you would want to hire Davis Webb in the first place. We'll see if he's a real candidate that you're promoting from quarterback's coach straight to head coach. That's a quick climb. Doesn't mean it's wrong. You can hire guys when they're young with that quick climb, but it doesn't sound like that's actually something that would work out too well. For UNLV football, they hired a new safeties coach, Cap Deedy. Deedy worked with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State and at Florida. And he's had jobs at 10 different colleges, right? He's bounced around quite a bit with a bunch of different defensive position and defensive titles. But more importantly, the press release that UNLV sent out to announce the hiring of Cap Deedy said this: UNLV football head coach Dan Mullen has hired Cap Deedy, PhD, as the Rebels' new safeties coach. Cap Deedy played at Auburn. He got his PhD from Auburn not too long ago. So he's got a PhD. The funny part is not that he has a PhD. What I want to know is what conversation happened to make sure PhD was included in the press release. Because I don't think you normally do that. I think normally you write your press release and you're announcing the coach and you don't say that they have a PhD. It's not a doctor or anything like that. I went back and looked. His last 4 jobs, he was most recently at Oklahoma State, right? There's a lower level job. He was at LIU in there, Charlotte's in there, Colorado State's in there. He's been in a lot of places. But his last 4 jobs have all said PhD. All of them in their release has been Cap Deedy, PhD. So this has been happening. I couldn't find some of his later jobs. So like, for example, he was at Arkansas for a year, I think it was. I couldn't find the press release from Arkansas that said Cap Deedy has been hired, and if they said PhD. Same for when he was with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State and Florida. Couldn't find those press releases. Would have been great, but this has been a thing that when Cap Deedy gets hired, you put the PhD in the press release, and that's how you refer to him. So UNLV, they got a PhD on their staff. Should be good. The WNBA, they do not have a collective bargaining agreement. There can't be a season, but they announced their schedule for the upcoming 2026 season. Despite that, 44-game schedule, supposed to start on May 8th. Again, if the CBA between the Players Association and the owners is finally agreed to. So if we're going timeline here, that's less than 4 months away, and more likely we're looking at like 3 months, since there'll need to be some sort of preseason for the WNBA to not have any missed games for the disagreement between the Players Association and the owners. That still would be plenty of time, but they have had plenty of time and still have not come to an agreement. And I guess I haven't read an update recently, but the most recent updates from a couple of weeks ago did not sound like they were close on any sort of agreement for what the next pay structure will be for the players in the WNBA. So is 3 months going to be enough time? Deadlines tend to make things happen a lot quicker. Is that going to be a deadline that gets them to agree to something, get somebody to budge, or are we actually going to have missed games? We'll see. But as of now, I would guess we do have missed games because I don't think they're close. And from usually the owners win, the players are the ones that back off and cave in. The way the players have talked, it doesn't sound like they're likely to cave in on what they want. So this would seem to be fairly contentious and a real chance for there to be a work stoppage or a lockout, whatever it is, and there to not be games, or missed games at least at some point, going into May when the season should be starting. By the way, Aces, if everything goes to plan, would open the season on May 9th against the Phoenix Mercury. That is a rematch of the WNBA Finals, which I like when leagues do that. I know it's a little hard at football because they don't always play each other, but I do like when we get a rematch of the championship game or series in the first game or series of the next season. In college football, here's an interesting one. And I don't know if this is the first, but it's the first that I've seen it. LSU is paying a buyout for an Ole Miss transfer. So Prince Will Umanliaman is transferring from LSU to Ole Miss. I should know how to say his last name. I still don't know how to say his last name. His name is Prince Will. That's all you need to know. He's got a brother named Princely in the NFL. He's following Lane Kiffin going from Ole Miss to LSU, but he had already signed a deal to stay at Ole Miss and get paid. But part of his deal has a buyout, and that buyout is $500,000. So LSU is going to pay Ole Miss $500,000. That's according to Garland Gillen, who covers college football. That's according to Garland Gillen, that LSU is going to pay $500,000 to Ole Miss to buy out Prince Will of his contract. This is how soccer works. You have transfer fees where teams don't trade for players like we see in American sports. They buy them from the previous teams. And those teams have to agree to sell the player, and you agree on a price and you sell the player, right? This is how soccer works. And it seems like the obvious step for college athletes. You sign a player, right? He signs a contract. We're going to pay you this amount of money, and 1, 2, 3, 4 years, well, however many years you want it to be. 5, well, 5 years of eligibility for sure soon. But let's just say player signs out of high school, 2-year deal with whatever school he's going to make however much money. As a freshman, he's awesome. He's better than the school he's at, right? And he then is looking to go to a better school that's going to pay him more money. Okay, cool. You still have a year left on your contract. You can't leave for free. If you want to leave, your new school has to pay us the buyout that we agreed to in your contract, right? It seems like an obvious step. And what would happen, and I know Ole Miss is not a group of 5 school, but what would happen is you would have the lesser schools would actually get a monetary benefit, a monetary value from losing players to the transfer portal to better schools. And, by the way, if a player signs a 1-year contract, then you don't get the transfer fee because he's a free agent in that regard. But you get some sort of fee out of this. And let's say you have a great player and he transfers, Jackson Arnold. He transfers away to Nebraska. But you had in the contract $1 million transfer fee or buyout, whatever you want to call it. And now UNLV has an extra $1 million to go spend on other players to bring them in to replace, I said Jackson Arnold, Anthony Calandria, to replace Anthony Calandria with Jackson Arnold, or to spread it around on defense, whatever you want to do. I think it's a pretty obvious step. There should be, people keep saying, college football is in chaos and all this is bad for it, and all, whatever. There just needs to be some uniformity. We just need some uniformity. We just need some rules in place that just say, all right, you sign a contract to play for the school for a certain amount of time for a certain amount of money. If you, as the player, want to get out of that, there's a buyout. If the school wants to get out of that, there's a buyout. Just like it works for coaches and just like it works in European soccer, right? That seems like what should be happening here, because part of the other thing that's annoying in college sports is you'll hear these numbers about how many players are in the transfer portal, and then you'll even hear 30% of kids in the transfer portal didn't even find a school the next year. Why did they go into the portal? It's because they got kicked off their program. It's because the coaches came to them and said, you're not good enough, get the hell out of here, right? They used to do that and just take the kids off scholarship. Now you go into the portal, but you weren't good enough at a Mountain West school. Nobody in Conference USA wants you. Okay, you can't, nobody in Division I wants you anymore. So if you sign a 1-year deal and the school says we're done with you, they're done with you. But if you sign a 2-year deal and then your coach is like, you sucked, you weren't good enough, we need to get rid of you, they got to pay you some money to go away. Otherwise, they got to keep paying you to stick around and play for the team. So I feel like there's obvious answers here. There's just not structure to put it in place. I don't know. It just seems like, all of this should be easy to do. You just need somebody to be in charge and say, this is how contracts work. This is what the language should be. And we just don't have that because college sports just is not allowed to have competent leadership ever, apparently. But this has been Bischoff's Briefs, brought to you by Battle Blast Las Vegas, the best laser tag in the Valley. Have your next birthday party at Battle Blast. If you book the party package, you'll get a private party room, dedicated party host, pizza, soda, arcade tokens, and obviously, laser tag. If you want to add on a game for the adults, you can do that as well, or just book it for your birthday instead of for your kid's birthday. Battle Blast Las Vegas, located at 8125 West Sahara Avenue, your next stop for fun in Las Vegas. The Golden Knights are in Boston tonight, 4 p.m. start, so an early start as it is an East Coast road trip for Vegas. Are we going to see Rasmus Andersson in his debut? Danny Webster of the RJ tweeted yesterday, basically saying not to expect him to play tonight, but Friday is a possibility because it takes this long to get a player from Canada to the U.S. to play a game, right? Zach Whitecloud's already in Canada playing for the Flames, but Rasmus Andersson can't get to the United States to play because what, is immigration control too busy doing other stupid shit? Sounds like it. But Rasmus Andersson, I don't know. Who knows if he's going to play? But I hope we see his debut. The Bruins are fun. because the Bruins don't lose in overtime. They also don't go to overtime. That's probably the better way to phrase that. In the year where everybody is just piling up overtime losses, the Boston Bruins only have 2 of them this season. 2 overtime losses. Golden Knights are out here doing it in every other game. Bruins only have 2. And to put it into perspective, right? This year, the Bruins have won 28 games. They've only lost 22. Meanwhile, the Golden Knights have won 24 and lost 24. Golden Knights have 60 points. The Bruins have 58. Because winning's not important in hockey. It's just getting overtime losses that's important. Also very helpful for the Golden Knights if you look at this. Boston is on 58 points, and I believe they're 5th in the division. The Golden Knights have 60, and they're in 1st. The Golden Knights in every other division would be at least 6 points out of first place. Every other division, at least 6 points out of first place. But on 60 points, they lead the Pacific Division. It's very nice. Very good setup there. But interesting story. David Pagnotta reported this yesterday, that Bill Foley is selling a part of the Golden Knights. Not the whole thing. David Pagnotta said it was about 10% of the team that Bill Foley is looking to sell. And a couple of different details here. So first off, 10% of the team, and David Pagnotta said he's trying to sell that for $200 million. Do some math there. Would mean the Golden Knights are worth $2 billion. Sell 10% of the team for $200 million. The team is worth $2 billion. Forbes, who does the franchise valuations for every sports team in the United States, they said in December that the Golden Knights were worth $2.2 billion, 13th highest in the NHL. So that's actually not like a overly high price. That's sort of right in line what Forbes would say they're worth. Now, is Forbes right? I have no idea. But Forbes says they're worth 2.2. Bill Foley's asking for an evaluation that's basically $2 billion. So Forbes is overselling it, or maybe Foley's being too cheap and asking for too little money here. The couple of interesting things that Pagnotta said when he reported this was, one, the Golden Knights are not the only team doing this. Other teams are kind of looking to sell a part of their team as well. And the reason they're doing it is to try and take advantage of the value of NHL franchises. And to use the Golden Knights as an example, Bill Foley bought the team for $550 million. That was his expansion fee. And we haven't made it a decade, and now they're worth $2 billion, right? He can sell 10% of the team and get nearly half of his expansion fee back. So franchise valuations have gone up. The NHL is doing well, and owners are saying, well, we should try to sell part of this and make some money off of it, which does lead me to question, do they think it's going to start coming down? Are we going to see franchise value or stagnate, whatever it is, and stop going up? Because if you thought it was going to keep going up, why would you sell now? If you thought it was going to keep going up, you wouldn't sell until you thought it was going to stagnate. So I do wonder that if multiple NHL teams, or owners, I should say, are looking to sell a piece of their team to cash in on the high valuations, does that mean they think the valuations are coming down? Other detail that David Pagnotta said is looking to the future, that there's the strong likelihood of expansion, right? And to tie into this team evaluation, last year there was a report that when the NHL expands, apparently they're going to, that the minimum price for the expansion fee would be $2 billion, just like how much Bill Foley thinks his franchise is worth while he's trying to sell 10% of them. Plus, there would be a $500 million minimum requirement to help build a new arena. So there's a little bit more, but the actual expansion fee, $2 billion. I wonder, does the NHL need a team like Vegas, who's not, like Toronto was valued as the highest evaluation of any NHL team. So not like team at the very top or team at the very bottom, just 13th most valuable franchise, pretty close to the middle. Do they need a team like that to basically sell part of the franchise to say, look, that team is worth $2 billion, so give us an expansion fee because that's a comp for you. Middle of the road. Like, is that, do they kind of need that as a price setting point? And would it be helpful if other teams did so as well? I don't know. I don't know if you need that, but maybe they would like that to say, yeah, this is why we're charging you $2 billion. Also, you'd probably ask for more. If the Golden Knights are valued at $2 billion, probably say, well, make it 2.5. And if it comes 5 years from now, Is it going to be $4 billion? Like, why wouldn't it keep going up? Unless the owners think it's stagnating, coming down, why wouldn't that number keep going up? So what the expansion fee of the 33rd and 34th teams in the NHL is probably going to be based a lot on what teams sell for, or portion of teams sell for, and what that means for value. I do wonder how long it'll take. Is it going to take 5 years, right? It doesn't seem like they're in a hurry to expand. So it's not like, oh yeah, they're going to announce it next year and get it going. The other parts though is like, does 33 and 34 work? It just seems like too many teams, right? Like what? Why? To get the expansion fees? I don't know. It just seems like you're getting to the point where college conferences are, where you're just too big. It's just like unwieldy. It's just like there's too many damn teams. What are we doing here? So I don't know. 33, 34 seems like a lot. As far as cities go, I know, trying to remember back in the summer, I think it was Atlanta and Houston were the two main ones that are sort of out there as possibly getting an NHL team. Houston's like third or fourth biggest metro population in the United States. So there's some obvious just quantity there to why you would go to Houston. I think also Houston could make sense in the way Vegas made sense, in that you could create new hockey fans, right? It wouldn't be, oh, we're going to a Canadian market where everybody cheers for the Oilers or the Maple Leafs already, and we're just trying to convert them into brand new fans. It would be, oh, these people don't care about hockey. If we give them a team, they care about hockey, and now we've got more fans. So maybe that works there. Atlanta would be what, the third time they'd go to Atlanta? Does it work the third time? It might. I don't know. Get good ownership, win some games early, and get some fans there? Maybe. But it seems like those would be the top two. They're big cities. They're in the south of the United States. The NHL would love to have more teams in the southern part of the United States. So that would be an easy two to go to in theory. But if it actually works, we'll see. And we'll see if Bill Foley sells 10% of the team. So if you got $200 million, you can go be Bill Foley's partial owner. Maybe Tom Brady wants to buy him. Does Tom Brady want to have a, hey, I show up 5 times a year and decide who the Golden Knights trade for at the trade deadline? He should do that. That'd be fun. This has been Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. Thank you for tuning in.